changes as nervously as we do. And I wanted to ask a couple of questions just to provoke thought about the changes that happened in paragraph 11 of the contract back in July. Of course, January is coming up. They may change it again. But I wanted to give a scenario and see what you think. And then we'll look at that contract change to see what the implications are. So in the market that we had over the summer, we'll see if it continues. But say you have a buyer who puts in an offer for $215,000 on a townhouse, but they have an escalation clause up to $225,000 in the event of competing offers. There are competing offers. They end up having to use the escalation clause. They sign an addendum, so they're on the hook for $225,000. But as occasionally happens, the appraisal comes in. The appraisal comes in at let's say it comes in at $225,000. The lender goes to verify funds and qualify the buyer at $225,000, but then the funds. So my question is, in that situation where the buyer has agreed to the higher price, is the buyer in default because the lender says they can't verify the funds? It's a VA loan. Does anybody think the denies the loan because they can't verify the additional money above the original sales price? Any volunteers?
You were cutting out a little bit, Susan. Your question was going in and out. You were cutting out with the Wi-Fi. Can you ask it one more time?
Oh, sure. Okay, so you have a contract originally written at the $215,000 sales price. There's an escalation clause. There's the buyer has to use.
Wait, you said there's an escalation clause, then you cut out.
Okay, I don't know if it's my earbuds. Maybe I should take those off. But anyway, they end up with, because there's an escalation clause in competing offers, the price ends up at $225,000. The lender denies the buyer's loan because they cannot verify the additional funds above the original $215,000 price. The question is the buyer in default? And this is a VA loan.
Okay, we have an answer. Go ahead, Chrissy.
I have another question.
Oh, okay. She has a question. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Did the appraisal come back?
It came in at 225.
If the appraisal came in at 225 and the escalation clause,
Yeah, the appraisal,
225, denying the loan.
Buyers no longer qualified at 225. They were only qualified at 215.
Okay.
Yeah. She's
But
saying
the problem is,
she's saying
and then that's okay. So in that case, default or no default in that case, if they just don't qualify.
If they don't have the funds to close, then they don't have the funds to close. Because they got to come out of pocket for that 10 grand because they only qualify for 215.
I mean, I'm assuming the lender gave them a pre-qual letter for 225, so it had its stipulations on there, so they wouldn't technically be in default, but.
Okay,
If they had,
so
if they had to close the gap for the 10 grand, that's the way I understood what she said.
all right, we lost Susan.
yeah, I'm getting ready to, I'm kicking off of my Wi-Fi, so I don't have.
Oh, okay.
More questions and answers.
All right, hold on one second. Let Susan respond to that.
Okay, so it sounds like we've got a couple things going on here. One is if the appraisal came in at 225 and they don't qualify at all, they just don't qualify financially, then I think you're right, they are not in default. But are listing agents, when you do have an escalation situation, making you get a new pre-qual letter at the higher price?
Yes.
Yes, my people do anyway.
Yeah, that's good, because if you don't, you could end up in this situation where they don't qualify for the higher amount and you still have the original pre-qual letter. But what if the appraisal came in at 220, they're qualified but there's a $5,000 gap and the funds are not verifiable? Do you think that buyer under a VA loan is still in default?
Only if they guarantee the appraisal gap. If they didn't guarantee the appraisal gap, then they're still good.
Agreed.
Yep.
Okay. And what's your reasoning if you had a listing agent that said, no, you're wrong about that? They agreed to pay they agreed to pay the extra amount, regardless of appraisal. They're in default now, because they agreed to it and they knew they possibly could have to come up with that money. Do you know where you would argue on behalf of your buyer in the contract for that?
I would say, where did they,
Under the finance.
I like, where did I write that they were guaranteed? I asked her to agree to me.
Well, you're saying that, you know,
Already did an offer, they're gonna.
yeah, but you're saying, Susan, that we know for sure that they did.
Yeah, in the escalation clause, they agreed to pay that much money.
Yep. And you're
And they signed
asking where in the contract it states that?
Well, I'm assuming there's an I'm assuming there's an escalation clause, and the buyer has agreed to go with that and to pay the 225, but then the appraisal comes in at 220 and the lender says, wait a second, we can't verify the extra cash. And I'm wondering, is the buyer in default at that point, or is the buyer still able to get out of the contract?
If they haven't guaranteed the appraisal, if they haven't guaranteed the appraisal, they're still good.
Yeah, the guarantee of the appraisal would be either in the escalation clause or in an addendum or in the other, provisions, right? The other provisions of the contract.
So the paragraph 11 is where you say. It's not about the appraisal, it's about the escalation clause.
It's the cash to close the
It's the
gap.
cash to close the gap.
It's a cash to close, exactly, cash to close issue. You know, I've grappled with this.
Yeah. We are
And I
too.
looked at, go ahead.
I said, yes, we
Yeah.
are too. We're grappling at it
Yeah.
as well, but we have contracts in front of us. So I just passed them out.
I'm not gonna
Okay. So where do you think, someone mentioned this earlier in the loan qualification section? I think that's where the answer to this is. And it maybe is an answer that a listing agent, at least as an attorney, I think is pretty clear. I'm not sure what the industry, what Rain meant in the change. But if you look at paragraph 6A, Romanet 2, on the lines 90, I guess it's 100 and 101, buyer's failure to have available for settlement the cash required by this agreement, including but not limited to down payment, constitutes a default. So that would hold them in default. And then down under 6B, sorry?
Oh, we were just saying, ooh.
I mean, but
We were like the Charlie Brown Christmas.
I still think that additional verbiage when they're guaranteeing that though.
Because it's not, the escalation clause and the appraisal gap are not a down payment or closing costs or prepays. It is additional funds that are not listed here.
Yeah.
And they're not a part of the agreement unless it is specifically stated.
Yeah, what she said.
Now, do you all typically, when there is an escalation clause, original contract price 215, they say they're going to go up to, as much as 10,000 to beat a competing offer. So the competing offer comes in at 224. Your clients then agree to pay that price or 225 or whatever. So they have agreed to it, right? Under that scenario.
They have, but it's the same as if you agree to it on page 1 of the contract, which then means that it's the same sort of thing. There's no additional verbiage. I would argue that there's no additional verbiage on the escalation clause that says that those additional funds are guaranteed by the buyer. So therefore, they are not a part of the agreement unless otherwise specifically stated.
Yeah, maybe it gets down to how the escalation clause is drafted. And I probably should have pulled one up to look at it. But it seems to me that if the yeah, I don't have one in front of me. Seems to
She's
me if the
emailing it to
escalate. Okay. I mean, if the escalation clause is clear, is that not part of the agreement though? And I'm just kind of being the devil's advocate here because I could see a listing agent.
It states in there that it becomes a part of the purchase agreement, but nowhere in the escalation clause does it say that the buyer is waiving their right to the appraisal value. So it's not guaranteeing the buyer in any kind of way.
Austin, feel free to chip in.
Agents would have to specifically write in whether it's on the escalation clause, an addendum, or the contract itself, that the buyer is guaranteeing any funds above the appraisal price to match the sales price. Nowhere in the contract that I'm aware of does it state that that is a contingency unless it is written in by the agent specifically.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that's gonna get it though is whenever you say guaranteed, that's gonna be, that
Which is
word.
why I leave that word.
Right, and so this is a learning lesson, not to, but that's the biggest thing, because a lot of agents write guaranteed in whatever paragraph they end up having from their brokers that don't look at what they're writing. So, you know, that word guaranteed is a rough one, you know, because it doesn't really mean guaranteed via loan or cash, it just says guaranteed.
Yeah, it's interesting is back in paragraph 11, something that was added this year based on people having so many, based on there being so many escalation clauses, the part that starts under 11A, line 275, it says if buyers obtaining VA financing and elects to complete the purchase at a price in excess of the appraised value, buyer will disclose the source of such funds to the department and pay the excess from such source. Such funds will not be borrowed unless approved by the department. And that's really more for the lender. That's clarification of the fact that the lender has to verify, but I don't think that changes the, I don't think that is implying that if the lender doesn't approve the source, that the buyer can get out if they've guaranteed it. And so I think the moral of the story is what Thomasina and you all were just saying, to be careful about the escalation clause. And if you're representing the buyer, about guaranteeing that. Because I think under 6A and 6B, like we went back to 6B, if the buyer's loan is denied, let's see, provided that financing was not a result of buyer's default, including buyer's failure to act in good faith to obtain the financing or failure to have available for settlement the cash required by the terms of this agreement, then they can terminate scot-free. But if they didn't have the cash, that's still a default. That's my reading of it, just a strict black and white reading.
The escalation clause specifically says that you have to adjust the loan amount and down payment as necessary.
We sent that to you and Austin. You should
Second
have it.
paragraph.
Yeah, thanks for sending that. Susan and I and some of the other attorneys in the office, the only thing I'll add is we wrestled with the language in paragraph 11. And just interesting how it states that, you know, it has notwithstanding any other provisions of this agreement, which sort of, it sounds like it basically exempts any attempts to for a buyer to basically, you know, waive that right ahead of time. So I think if you're representing a seller and you've got somebody that says, oh yeah, they write down, they'll guarantee the the appraised value 10,000, 15,000 more. And if you don't make changes to this paragraph, I think if that buyer were to get before a judge, if they were to back out of the contract due to the appraisal, I'm not sure that they wouldn't have clear grounds to do so, based on the wording, on the use of that, notwithstanding any other provision of this contract. So I think that's good advice.
This might clear up what we tell our agents, and might be why our compliance broker has been the one to do this all these years. So what we do is we make the agents go back and change the purchase price on the front page and have it initialed. And so now the escalation clause after winning is no longer in play anyway for us. Now we're back to the purchase agreement because everything is changed on the purchase agreement. So that's what our compliance broker Lucy has them all do, and she catches it each time and makes them do it. So that is a difference between us and a lot of brokerages. Because the other ones aren't. And also, if we're on the opposite side, she tells them to do it too. So no matter if we're listing or buyer side, she advises them to do it so that it's back to the purchase. And now all the rules are back in play as we know them, you know, as opposed to dealing with the escalation clause. The escalation clause is just there basically to win the bid is how we are viewing it.
Well, that makes sense to have a common line of attack within your company, and then to have everybody know what you're doing and have it be clear. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Chrissy was saying on the escalation clause itself in the second paragraph, I believe.
It's the last paragraph.
I'm sorry, the last paragraph, she's saying that, and I don't know the escalation clause off the back of my hand, but she's saying that in the last paragraph, it actually states that you're supposed to do that. Now, we just did it, but there's a lot of brokerages, but she's saying it states that in the last paragraph. Do you see that, Susan?
No. it's
Yeah, I do
the-
see that. But
Second
initialing the
paragraph.
increased purchase price, yeah, in the purchase agreement. Yep, so you're supposed to change it and initial it is what this is saying. Yeah.
So I wonder now, so here's the question I have for you in Austin, because other brokerages don't do that. So since that's what the escalation clause states, if it doesn't get done, is the escalation clause in play now that we're talking about this?
Or is, yeah, that becomes a void.
Because honestly, if we're the buyer side on this, it's in the best interest of our clients not to do that.
Right.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, to have it be vague. Yeah, yeah.
That's changing.
Give myself a day. I mean, if we're the listing side, obviously we would push, but if we're the buy side, I
It
mean,
has to. However,
Okay.
then that gets a little bit shady and that gets a little bit gray zone. And if there's one little inkling where the seller could then release because they're like, well, at this mess, like I thought we agreed to this and now we're not at this. So I'm gonna let the picker go one extra day and then I'm gonna terminate this and get what I actually want.
yeah,
So it could backfire.
it could, but I think that
Mhm.
escalation clause would last all the way until the end of closing if they wanted out, if they could.
Mhm.
That's what I'm thinking on the buy side, because then at the end, if they don't end up with funds because they had to do something else. Just a thought.
Yeah,
Just a
it
thought.
certainly muddies the waters a little bit because you haven't confirmed the new purchase price. Now, it says it shall be evidenced. Yeah, I think it's better to do things. Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Matt? Can I ask a question? It's Adam. If that happened, paragraph 8.1 says they have up to 10 days unless otherwise stated until it's a moot point. So my question is, could they just do a second lien? Like an owner's finance second lien, would that work? In that case,
Paragraph 8 is just talking about the closing date to be extended.
the process in closing the specified amount of compliance with applicable law. They have 10 days.
Yeah.
They've got 10 days to close. If they don't meet the closing date, they've got 10 days to close if there's any loan issues or if there's any title defects that need to be cleared up before closing occurs. That's all paragraph 8 is
So
talking
they
about.
still need it.
Yeah, I think what Adam's suggesting is that the buyer and the seller do something on the side where the buyer says, I'll still pay it to you, but I need to pay it over time. I want to give you a private note and the second deed of trust. And is that your question? Can you do that?
Yes, ma'am.
I mean, honestly, I think you could do it, but I don't think you should do it, especially on a VA and FHA loan. On an FHA loan, the parties, including the agents, the settlement agent, the buyer and the seller, typically have to sign some sort of a certification that says that basically the purchase agreement as in black and white represents the whole deal between the parties and that there are not any other agreements between the parties. So I really think you could be violating FHA loan provisions to do that.
Okay.
And then for VA, I think it's similar, especially in 11 on line 277, 278 under paragraph 11, it says such funds will not be talking about the excess amount. Such funds will not be borrowed unless approved by the department. So I would take that to imply that also on a VA loan, there cannot be some sort of a side deal with some portion of down payment being borrowed, even if it's from the seller. Austin, I don't know if you agree with that, but I think it's skating on thin ice as far as mortgage fraud to do something like that. So.
Absolutely. I think we'd have to pull out as well. We had a situation that come up recently where it came to our attention that a seller was expecting a buyer to pay him, or the seller was going to front some money for the buyer's sake to have the buyer pay him back after closing. And we just told him we couldn't handle the closing if that's going to go on. And so of course everybody came back and said, "Oh no, that's not going on. We're not doing that." But we'd have to get out as well. So.
On the 275 they were just referencing, I know that it's literally saying you can't get a gift for the excess. However, you can get a gift for the closing costs. So,
So if you have one, then basically you're still gonna be able to get the other.
as far as I know, but in this provision, and I'm just speaking, obviously, novice as we all are in the room, but as far as I know, yes, you can definitely get a gift. You just can't get a gift for the overage. Right?
Is that right? Awesome.
Yeah. Gifts are definitely treated differently than loans. If somebody's loaning you the money with the intent for you to repay it, the lender's going to treat that differently than if somebody's just giving you the funds without any written expectation for you to repay those funds.
I guess the lender has to go through the process of verifying the source of the gift, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's no different than the person that has the initial funds. It's just a bank statement showing that they had 10 grand in the bank. And that's the gift that they transferred from gift or to giftee.
Does it have to be a relative still
The
making the gift?
Pretty clear cut on the VA website. Yeah, it's got to be somebody with a vested interest. We talked about this last time, and I.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. Yeah, yes, yeah. To answer your question, yes, it's got to be a family member or some vested interest. Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of a great.
All right. All right. I think that's all I had. Austin, did you have anything else?
I did. I only wanted to mention the holiday court closures, and just mainly for your seller's sake. The like Virginia Beach, for instance, is closed the 23rd and the 24th and the 27th. So you may want to if you've got sellers that are closing, say, or the buyer side set to close on the Wednesday, the 22nd. Most likely your sellers will not see the disbursement of their funds or the payment of the mortgage or anything until the following Tuesday of the next week. And some folks have issues with, well, they get the keys at this point, but I don't get my funds until the following week. Each city's different on that though. Norfolk's just the 23rd and the 24th, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Suffolk, basically the rest of them are pretty much the same on that, just the 23rd and 24th. Virginia Beach is the only one that's also closed that following Monday. And then New Year's as well, Virginia Beach is closed the Thursday and the Friday, whereas most of the other jurisdictions are closed only on the Friday. So just something to keep in mind, I think, for your listings, and so they have a clear expectation of when they can expect to see those funds.
Yeah, that's good. Now you guys are closed the 24th and 25th, correct?
Correct.
Austin?
Yep,
Okay,
and we'll
and
be
then-
back on the following Monday.
Okay, and then you're closed New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, or just New Year's Day?
Just the just New Year's Eve, the 31st. I think New Year's Day is the Saturday. So yeah, we'll be open Monday through Thursday that week.
Okay, so Carla and Caitlin, if you guys are on here, please make sure you go through our closings, and if there's any that are on those days, by default, make sure you contact the agents to move that closing date up a day, so that they can make sure that they close, especially if JWL is closed on those days. So sometimes people write those contracts and they don't realize that it falls on holiday the next month. Also, just so you guys know, if you ever have a contract, please do not write it on the last day of the month. Go back a few days, because anytime you write a contract on the last day of the month, it's almost guaranteed to close the next month. So always write it before the 27th of the month, preferably the 25th and back, but before the 27th, so that you guys can still have the same closing in the same month without messing up your numbers, if you want to do that.
Or the buyer's closing costs.
Or the buyer's closing costs, yeah, because you go into another month, so. Thank you, Austin, thank you, Susan, we appreciate
All
it
right.
so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks for
that
letting
was
us.
a great one.
Oh, great. Thank
Yeah.
you. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you too, Susan, and if we don't see you, or if I don't see you, Merry Christmas. And Merry
too.
Christmas, Austin, to y'all and your families as well, okay?
Thank you.
All right.
Merry
Bye-bye.
Christmas.
All right. Merry Christmas. Lucy, you are up, my lady.
Where do you want me?
I think that, actually, they might be able to see you right there. Yeah, I think they can see you, as long as they can hear you, so go ahead.
The one big thing I wanna hit on again is as you're going through the production of your purchase agreement and all the associated documents, please do not submit or ask for exemptions on documents you know you're not using without having a ratified contract. I'm getting submission of exemptions for PICAs because you know you're not using it in your purchase agreement. I don't have a purchase agreement to bounce that back off of, so I'm going to reject it until you have a ratified contract and all its associated documents completely signed and submitted. So save us all some time and my guilt in having to hit the reject button. And don't submit it till you have a fully ratified contract all at once, okay? And again, when I send corrections, please try to get them done within 48 hours. It's really hard on all parties and all of us if we come down to you're submitting your final signed altas and your walkthrough, but you've still got outstanding buyer documents because you didn't correct them the day I sent them back. So please be cognizant of the corrections and don't keep saying, well, I'll get to it, because all of a sudden now you're scrambling to backtrack because we all want you to get paid.
Yep, agreed.
Anybody have any questions for me? Anything, any concerns, anything that's come up?
And those online, you can unmute if you have any questions for Lucy. Una, that's a killer picture of you, just so you know, you're the one up on the big screen. It looks amazing. That's a great pic.
I had a lot of help.
It looks good. It looks really good. We're just gonna
Thank
leave it
you.
there. 'Cause the other thing, I want to add a couple of things. One, don't forget to contact Lucy before you contact me. There's always something she knows or can do. And we had one actually yesterday. I was ready to go brawl with a broker and I said, what did Lucy say? And she said, they just said, oh, you know what? I went to Lucy until this point, let me check. And I was ready to brawl with the other broker. And she came back and said, got another plan, no brawl. And I went, see, there's always it's because Lucy goes through your contract, so she approves your contract, so she knows them, and she can really like quickly go, oh yeah, I remember seeing this, or pull it up. Whereas I haven't laid eyes on the contract. So I'm going off of what you're telling me, which is very dangerous, but sometimes I get caught up in the moment, you know, because I will brawl pretty quickly. But we all have to remember that Lucy will never brawl, but she will tell me when it's time. She will call me up and say, it's Thomasina broker time.
Yeah.
Time to go. She tag teams me in. It's like the WWE. It's like, hey, she's like, whoa, wait, not yet. And I'm like, let me. And then finally, you know, she's like, and she lets me in. So, but that's on her because I do get excited because I'm ready to fight for you guys. You know that. But I have to remember too that she's the one who gets to hit that go button for me. So always make sure you go to Lucy first and then come to me. And yes, it does take us a little bit of time sometimes to get back to you for sure. Because sometimes at 10 o'clock on a Sunday, we're just not going to be able to get back to you as quick. But remember that we need to recharge too. And so, you know, we work way longer than the 40 hours, but sometimes it does take a minute. We had some issues a couple weeks ago with that. And all three of us, me, the mentor, and Lucy were on, and we're like, you know, we're trying to get this straight, but it really was something that could wait. And we just need to make sure that we're calling in everybody when it's needed, not something that can just wait until the next morning when it's that late. So just remember Lucy first, guys, Lucy first, because I do get excited and then I jump into Lucy. Lucy has to smack me back and go, I didn't tag in. I didn't tag in. So remember that. And then Carla, you are next up, my darling. What do you have to say?
Good morning. Brokerment. We're having a lot of questions, people not understanding about the different checklists and putting the items on the correct checklists. So that is definitely something that I will be going over on the brokerment classes. First one is January the 10th at 10 a.m. So I expect to see a lot of people there. Second, we're starting our year-end process. So we will be reaching out to confirm everyone's home address. I know a lot of you have moved this year, so we do need to have your current home address and make sure that it has been updated with DPOR, RAIN, and Hurrah. And lastly, we'll be starting to work on the COE awards. So we will be reaching out to those of you who have met the criteria to go over your data sheet so that we can submit for your award.
Okay, and then if you have a question about which checklist to use, they're all named after what you're supposed to use them for, but if you do have a question, please shoot Carla a text or call her and ask her before you start it, because you don't want to have to re-upload. So if you don't feel like you're doing the right one, just double check. For those of you that have a mentor, double check with your mentor that you're using the right checklist, because we have had a lot of issues recently with people using the wrong ones, and I'm not sure what that's about. So let's make sure that we do use the right ones to save you time and also to save our wonderful admin the time as well. Caitlin is going to be doing a lot of our IT stuff now. She is getting entrenched with it. So she's diving in, and so she's going to do some classes on command and different things. Chrissy is going to be doing a lot next year with that as well. We have a lot more classes coming next year, more than what we did this year. And we've taken every suggestion that you guys have had, and I think we've actually met every training that you guys have asked for. We literally, the ALC went through and crossed off every single training that our whole office has asked for, and we did not miss one and added more. So you guys literally got every single training that you've asked for. It's coming in 2022 and more. So that's wonderful. I'm gonna let some vendors talk, and then we'll do some hurrahs. Don't forget, tomorrow is the office Christmas party. You get a kit to do a gingerbread house, one per family. You and your family can kind of join in. It's going to be from 2 to 5. So there's going to be a 3-hour period there. And you guys can come in, do your gingerbread house. You're going to do a little video. There's going to be voting, which is going to be great. We have food that's going to be provided, which is awesome. And then we're also going to have prizes. It's going to be ugly sweater, as it always is, because everybody loves that. So ugly sweater tomorrow. Also, please don't forget to bring an unwrapped toy in with you tomorrow. If you can, go to the Dollar Tree or Five Below and get a toy if you want. If not, we completely understand. But if you can, to try to give back to the children this year, please bring an unwrapped toy in tomorrow. And then I am going to let Craig go first. That's you?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think they can, well, maybe not, Craig. Maybe can you just go right behind Nikki?
Yeah.
Then they can see you.
Hello, Captain Mortgage again. How's everybody doing? So, two things today. What happened last week, pseudo last week, this week. We all know buyers are what? Liars. Very good. So I have a senior chief that I'm doing a deal with right now, very nice guy. And I asked him, does he own the other property he told me about that his wife owns? He said, no, I'm not on the mortgage. Okay, cool. Are you on the deed or title or anything? He said, no, not at all. Fine, we get a ratified contract, we do a risk assessment or a fraud report, and guess what? He's definitely on the title. So now we're 10 days before closing, and they gave me 21 days on a VA loan, FYI. For all of you that don't know, that's a big no-no because of appraisals.
Yeah.
Either way, we're gonna get it closed. I'm not worried about that. I assured them of that. However, when you lie to us, to the lender, it makes things a lot more difficult. So I only say this to ask you all, please just reiterate to your clients that I, the lender, am their lawyer. I'm on their side. I want this deal to close. The underwriter is the judge. That being said, you don't lie to your lawyer. So that's all I can say is none of us want to be scrambling 10 days or less before closing because we figured out this person owned another property that we didn't account for. It's not that they don't qualify, because it's just just taxes and insurance that they have to account on there, but it's go ahead and accept it. They obviously tried to replace them. They're 100-year-old windows or getting new windows anyway. That's another scenario that would happen. So that's the 2 things that we've for lessons learned with a lender.
We have a question over here.
How long does that process usually take to get that waiver?
Not long. We have a direct number with the VA that we contact, and it's 24 hours, literally. The one with the reglazed windows, from start to finish, it was less than 48 hours to get that whole turnaround. So actually, really not that long, considering it's government agency.
What else did I
Then we gotta go fix it.
So,
But I mean, we can be very persuasive. That's why we get the letter from the buyer. And it's usually something small, like the windows was like
Hey
a
guys,
real.
let me talk, because they can't hear with everyone else talking at the same time, so let's take turns.
So the, I lost my train of thought.
I know, I'm sorry.
That's fine. So,
the windows
yes, ma'am.
waiver denied, not
Yes.
denied.
So that was like one of the big things we honestly didn't know. We didn't know if we were gonna be able to get it because it is a huge expense. I mean, you're talking $10,000 on this big 100-year-old house. We don't know. Guess what? You don't win if you don't try, right? So just to know that that option is there. So if you're putting an offer on a VA or you're listing and you're accepting and you know that they're peeling paint and they're gonna call that out, just know, don't be afraid to accept that VA offer if it's just a little bit of chipping paint on one spot. You know, because there's potential that it's a very simple process. We'll just reach out to them. We have some, have to write a letter, things of that sort. Adam, you had something?
Yeah, not to go on a tangent, but if you have a rehab loan and somebody falls to the payout for the purpose of asking for a partial release, like they want to parcel off part of the land or part of the house or it mainly happens in commercial, but I'm sure it happens.
You're talking about just a straight rehab, not a VA rehab loan? Just another No, it's fine.
How does the
I just want to make sure
how does the underwriter, what are the parameters typically for what contingency they allow for a partial lease? Whether it's getting, they bought a house, they want to sell part of the land for the house or.
So Upfront, my company does not do land loans. We push all of our land loans to Whole Point.
Okay.
So
If
in
they
that
bought a house
regard-
that has land on it,
I'm sorry?
if they bought a house that has land on
Are you talking about like splitting a parcel?
Like subdividing?
it. Yeah.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with the lender at all.
Yeah.
They have to
It
purchase.
does, because they have to call for partial release if they're gonna sell part of it, and the loan was.
I'll be honest with you, that's a great question for the title person. That's a great question for the lawyer, because that's more of a law question. And then the first lender on the note does not want to be the second lender on the note, or want another person on the note unless they need it, right? Unless there's like some crazy, what's the solar panels, thank you. Unless it's something crazy like that.
I just dealt with solar panels, and if it's gonna be somewhat similar where you're trying to get the solar panels to remove their UCC, they had to have a lot of stuff in writing between my current seller and the new buyer, saying that the new buyers agreed to take over whatever that lien is, so they will remove it temporarily. But again, that was all attorneys, and it had nothing to do with the lender at all.
Yeah.
So if it's gonna be a similar situation, like that's how they have to go about it, but I can't imagine that the lien would even allow it to happen just because you're splitting the value at that point.
I would, you know, direct that question to the attorney first, and then they would reach out to the lender and they would kind of work it out in that regard. Did they catch the thing about the VA appraiser? Because that was really the big thing.
Can you just go one more time, just to make sure, because I don't know where exactly it cut off when you were speaking, because it was right in the beginning.
Yeah, so on a VA appraisal, sometimes we get VA appraisal waivers for like minor fixes, like a couple of deck boards need to be replaced, or a little bit of chipping paint. Now, if it's a huge, like, it's gonna cost $20,000, then we might not be able to get that appraisal waiver, but we actually have contact with the VA. In that case, we have to get a buyer to write, you know, a little letter saying, hey, I'm going to replace these 2 deck boards that the VA appraiser wants them to replace, just so we can close. And then to answer, Jordan had a great question.
How long does it take?
How long does it take? Usually the turnaround.
What a great question.
Yeah. It's usually 24 to 48 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, it's usually about 24 to 48 hours. It's not a huge turnaround time, because we do contact them directly, and it is actually not that hard for us to get them on the phone, because we do have the correct number.
Okay, cool.
That was it. Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
wanna say,
Yes,
And this is why we have these people in-house for you.
yes.
Because they go above and beyond, they've got your back beyond any other generic lender. Use these people, they're the best in the business.
Agreed,
I mean, he is a
agreed.
captain, so.
Yeah, and he's a captain.
I had a generic lender, tried to do an appraisal waiver and could not do it, could not figure it out for a week. That's why I asked that question.
Wow,
For a VA, for a VA loan.
For a VA loan.
It's usually 24 to 48 hours.
wow.
The one with the windows took a couple, like 72 hours, honestly, I'm not gonna lie. It's always.
That was a lot.
The one thing that doesn't-
But it was a handrail that they wanted waived on a historic house.
That's,
Wow.
so I will say this, the handrail thing is kind of different than a couple of cracked deck boards or this, because the handrail is a safety thing. So it's kind of a switch, you know, it's a little bit different. I mean, obviously,
they-
broken deck boards are a safety thing too, but they're really weird about the freaking handrails. They're so weird.
I just
A
said it.
handrail and a step. They're so weird. I don't know
I
why.
had to get a response from the VA.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Let me know. I can figure it out.
I had an appraiser call for a handrail on a 2-step out, because it was like off of the supposed master bedroom, and it was an exterior handrail. The 2 steps were pretty deep, so probably more like private, but even still, I've never had them haul it out for something so small. And they did. It's little teeny tiny in it.
Yeah.
I was like, all right.
All right, Greg,
Yes.
you're up, sir.
I'm up. So who's ready to learn about some home insurance?
Me, it's me. I am. Me.
So, Greg Act with Farmer Insurance Group, we do home, auto, and commercial, flood, builder's risk, you name it, you can write it. To touch on the handrail, if it gets through appraisal, it gets through closing, that's gonna come up during the home insurance inspection. So an FYI, it is a Virginia, state law, if you do more than 3 steps, you are gonna have to have a handrail on there. So through closing, insurance will pick it up later, but, as for home insurance, so we do, anything and everything. At Armor, it was designed, whenever Armor Insurance was created, that we want to be able to offer any and all products, not just one product. For example, who's here has heard of Progressive Insurance? Everybody. So Progressive can only write Progressive home insurance. Here at Armor, we represent close to 50 different companies across the board. We offer Progressive for home insurance, but we also offer 15 other different home insurance products as well. So what we can do is take the customer's information, shop the market, find out who's offering the best rates, the lowest premiums, the best coverages, you name it. Now we do look at Progressive, we also look at many other companies. The difference in prices can be, twice as much. I've seen Progressive quotes be $2,000. I've seen a Homeowners of America quote be $1,000. This can be a make or break on any deal, especially if someone's tight on their DTI. Now, I'm sure you've heard of or worked with other independent agencies. What sets us at Armor apart from all of the other companies out there is, one, we don't charge any additional fees on top of whatever that carrier charges. We don't charge any service fees. There's no fine print at the bottom saying we're going to add on $195 processing fee. This could be something that's not realized whenever they're doing the closing cost worksheet, making sure all of their TTIs are in line. And then there's an additional $200 that goes on top of closing, and now they're over the edge and can't close because they don't meet that monthly dollar amount. Whatever the company charges, that's what we charge. No fees on top of that. Also, does everybody here work 9 to 5?
No.
Nobody. For us as well. As if somebody calls you at 8 o'clock at night, they have a question, they want to submit an offer, you don't submit that offer right then and there, you might miss out on the deal. Insurance is the same way. For us, if I get a quote request, let's say last night I was in Atlanta Airport, I get hey, can you build up this home insurance quote? It takes me half hour, an hour to get everything worked up. I can send it right back to you. I mean, I don't know, I know you're a loan officer, I don't know how long it takes to get a quote back, but our goal at Armor is no more than 2 hours tops. Now, things happen. There's a lot of claims on the properties. We have to do surplus lines and get things, work things out. That might take longer than 2 hours. Obviously, we relay that to the customer or the loan officer we're working with. Say, okay, I'm working on it. It might be tomorrow before we get back to you, but things are, the ball is rolling. We know whenever you're working with the customer, they might need to know right then and there if a property is in a flood zone, or how much is it going to be for that flood insurance. If you're in Larchmont, for example, that area floods if there's a high tide, that flood insurance premium could be anywhere from $4,000 to $700, depending on what street that you live on there. So if you're showing a property, you're like, hey, is this in a flood zone? And that's an easy thing to do. All I need is an address, find out if it's flooding, find out if it's in a flood zone, or two, you need to find out how much the home insurance is going to be in the flood insurance. All that we need is their birth, name, and address. So depending on the person, I know some realtors and loan officers that are AD, they just want to pass the information along to the customer saying, hey, contact whomever, reach out to them, they can get a quote worked up, or I know some people like to provide that extra level of service and say, hey, I've went out, I did a little bit extra work, I got the flood insurance quote, I got the home insurance quote for you, the customer. Here's what you think, everything looks good. Here's my guy you can contact to reach out. So I just wanted to say a little bit more about Armor Insurance, who we are. More than happy to meet anybody on a one-on-one basis, let you know a bit more about me, about the company. More than happy to do a coffee, take out a lunch, or everything. I will leave some cards out on the counter, but
You brought cookies too.
yes, yeah. But thanks for having me. We're happy to
I like
questions.
Mr. Agnew, if it's over a slab or a crawl space, does that change things in terms of flood premiums or?
Absolutely.
Okay, because you use a structural.
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
slab.
So crawl space, I mean, there's so many different factors that go into flood insurance, but obviously the higher off the ground, the better rate that you're going to be. As of October 1st to the 4th, FEMA did change all of their requirements when it comes to flood insurance and how they quote things. Before, to go through FEMA, you get an elevation certificate. Now you don't need it. All I need is an address and that's it. I can get a quote worked up. I don't even need the name of the person because flood insurance is not based on credit or insurance score, whereas your home insurance has a huge factor. Flood, just where the property is at is what determines it. No longer an elevation certificate. Well, thank you, sir.
How long does it take you to turn around and get a quote for flood insurance? If you just say, hey, is this in a flood zone and what is the?
2 hours.
If I'm at a computer, 10 minutes. But everything, I mean, typically at least no more than 2 hours. Obviously, you know, things might come up or I'm traveling, hey, I can pass it along to Dominique, for example, another agent or somebody at the office.
Yeah, that's Dominique, everybody.
Dominique.
Any other?
Say again?
All the people who are raising their houses, it doesn't make any difference.
Makes a huge
It does,
difference.
yeah, so for
Yeah.
elevation certificate, he said it does.
Oh, it does.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you don't need an elevation certificate in order to get the FEMA policy. You used to need an elevation certificate, somebody who would come out to the property and actually analyze how high the property is, what the elevation is from sea level to ground level, what does the policy look like, so. and that's
Yeah, so now with satellites and everything, they can pinpoint exactly how high we are off the ground, so it makes a big difference. Now, it still might help, it's not gonna hurt to get one, but they are expensive. I mean, it's $400 to $800 depending on who you're going through and how quickly you want that easy.
Any other questions? Anybody online have any questions? We'll look at the chat real quick.
Also, just, it's a good rule of thumb, if the property is in a flood zone, just ask the seller if they have one, because it's likely, because this rule just changed, it's very likely that if they have a FEMA policy, that when they bought the home, they needed an elevation certificate, and they should still have a copy of it. So just ask if they have.
Yeah, they should have it, for sure.
And should your insurance be grandfathered in?
No.
For the
So like if somebody has a rate already, the new owner can acquire that insurance and keep their lower rate.
Rates are constantly changing, so it would be great.
I've never heard of anyone acquiring a rate in insurance. I've never heard of
You
anybody
can
acquire.
transfer one policy to another.
Hey, if the insurance is transferred.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's cutting off your Zoom now, so you might want to ignore.
Yeah, we're about to climb. It's okay.
Anything else? No?
No.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, and so the other thing we're going to do doesn't make my face is
Not
one last
that
thing.
angle.
Okay, so one last thing. I'll make sure you guys can see that.
that I don't know you either.
Okay, so we have 3 new members of our family. Jimmy Ray Dunn, you guys may have known him. He used to be on the radio for the Eagle. Jeff Chance, you guys may know him. He's been around for a while, like 20-some years in real estate. So welcome, Jeff. And then we have a brand new agent, and that's Carrie Dunlap. So welcome, Carrie, if you see her. She's been doing really great. And then our agents of the month. So Lauren Magaletti is the listing agent of the month. Congratulations, Lauren. Whoops. I hit something over here. Oh. Jean and Chrissy for Team Rockstar is the closing team of the month by volume. Closing agent of the month by volume, Stacy Corder. Congratulations, Stacy. Gail Driver is the closing agent of the month by units. Congratulations, Gail. Team Rockstar again, closing team of the month by units. Listing agent of the month, Brian O'Donnell by volume. And I think that's it, yeah. So congratulations to all of them. I'm gonna check the chat one more time, make sure we don't have anything up here. And that is all. All right. Thank you guys so much. The ones that are online, I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. Hopefully you were able to see everything. We had a little bit of a problem here at Gather. And I think we went over everything though a couple times. Plus this is recorded, so I'll make sure that I get the recording out as well. So I will, what? Yeah, I can't get this. So I will see everybody tomorrow at the party. which is going to start at 2 and we'll go until 5. Again, we have food and other things. So I'll see you all then. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.